those of you that were here yesterday, I presented some of our research at Insight 222, and it was consistently found that leading companies in people analytics have actively built a data-driven culture in HR. And when we dug into this a little bit deeper, we identified 4 key findings for building data literacy at scale. One of those was role modeling by the CHRO and HR leadership team. The second was the people analytics leader taking the lead on upskilling initiatives. The third was 5 key skills to focus on in building data literacy in HR professionals. That's consulting skills, influencing stakeholders, data interpretations, being able to build recommendations from insights, and storytelling. And the fourth was investing appropriately for a multi-year upskilling program. So this panel will discuss some of these topics and others based on the experience of the leaders that are on the panel, and provide insights on how to successfully create that data-driven culture and allow PA and HR professionals to thrive. So first, we're going to start, and I'll ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and their role. So starting with you, Gitanjali, as you're in the middle there.
I'm in the middle.
Can you provide a brief introduction to you, your organization, as well as an overview of your experience with leading initiatives to upskill HR professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. I'm Gitanjali Gamal, and I'm with Johnson & Johnson, where I am an HR business partner. So I am a head of HR for our global commercial strategy, as well as our global business development organizations and our pharmaceutical business. But prior to this, I also had the good fortune of being a leader of the people analytics team, and I've done that type of role in multiple organizations before. So I've seen now, I think, analytics and the whole upskilling journey from a couple of different perspectives. So hopefully I can share a little bit about that in a little bit, and really glad to be here.
So you're that dream for all the people analytics leaders in the room, a data-driven HR business partner who's worked in people analytics.
I'm here.
Courtney, over to you.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. I'm Courtney McMahon from Colgate-Palmolive. I've been there about 4 years, and I have to plug Colgate because when I first joined, or actually before I joined, because of course I had to learn about the company when I was interviewing, but before I interviewed, I didn't know that Colgate actually had all the products that they have. They actually have a Hill's pet food division, if some of you have dogs and cats. There's actually a Tom's of Maine part of the oral care. There's personal care, which includes Elta MD for all of you people who know the sunscreen. It's the best sunscreen out there, FYI. And there's things like soft soap and Irish Spring and Fabuloso for those of you who actually do cleaning in your house. So it's a really huge company of 34,000. That's big to me. The products are sold in 200 countries. So actually the job is really hard, right? To get everybody to be data-driven, especially in an HR organization that's this widespread. And some people don't speak the language that I speak. And what are they doing and what am I doing? We're pretty decentralized. So really the HR data-driven strategy is in part trying to corral all of these people to kind of be in lockstep about how we talk about data with our leaders and also with the business in general, not just HR leaders and HRLT, and not just the business leaders, but literally the business strategy. And I'll go more into that in a bit.
And Kevin, same
Sure.
question to you.
Thank you. So I'm Kevin Zahn. So I'm from Bunge. So for those of you that don't know Bunge, thank you, Courtney. So I'm going to model off of you and kind of tell you a little bit about Bunge. So Bunge, we are a global agriculture business. We have about 23,000 employees worldwide and generate about $60 billion in revenue annually. One thing to know about Bunge is, it's located in St. Louis. It's kind of known as St. Louis best in secret because it's the best company. It's in St. Louis that no one really knows about. But so now, all of you, I know you represent a lot of great companies, but I have to say we are a really, really, really good company. So if you're interested, go to bunge.com/careers to find your next opportunity. But in terms of me, so my role at Bunge, so I lead our HR strategy and insights function. So I did come from people analytics, so I ran that. But now within HR strategy, so I look over our people analytics team, HR technology, M&A, workforce planning, and our portfolio management. So it's a little bit of both now. So I think now it's what I've been able to see and observe, similarly with my fellow panelists here, kind of the evolution of people analytics and how do we drive people analytics in an organization. So to answer your question, David, around what have I done in terms of enabling HR, I think I've done a lot. I've created some things, found that it wasn't successful, inherited organizations where we had really mature ways of enabling HR with data, found that also to be somewhat unsuccessful at times. But at the end, what I realized is, for every good intention may not ultimately lead to the right outcome. And I think sometimes that's okay, but hopefully today with this session, I'll kind of walk you through some things that, I found to be good and actually works, so that you don't necessarily make the same mistakes that I have.
So moving to you, Courtney, we're going to look at the role of the CHRO and the HR leadership team in helping develop a data-driven culture. So how important is that? Not just in developing, but sustaining a data-driven HR function that you've got role modeling by the senior leaders in HR.
Yeah, okay. Before I go there, I'm just going to say fashion before, practicality. So I'm going to have to hold this because I need to keep my earring in. And apparently it was very loud. Apologies. Okay, so back to the CHRO. Super important, obviously. So I think we actually invested a lot of time, money, and energy in upskilling and doing what we thought was right. Starting in 2019, even before I arrived, and when I arrived in 2020, I just kind of kept the ball rolling, really without the CHRO saying much at all. That's an issue. We kind of built it. Some of them came, the rest of them didn't come. So Kevin was just saying, sometimes you do things and it doesn't quite work out. I would say we went a good 2 years before we actually brought the CHRO to the forefront to say, this is expected in your role. If you don't like it, leave. I mean, maybe not in those words, but that's kind of the undertone. This is where we're going. And it's where the business is going, right? So we need to go where the business goes. And so that was key. And as soon as she said that, we made progress, I swear. And right after that as well, she was like, what does that look like, right? So, okay, be data-driven. What does that look like? It actually looks like ensuring that you have data behind everything you're bringing, at least in front of me and also in front of your leaders that always have to have data. There's also a misstep in that as well, because she didn't say insights, she said data. So then guess what happened? People brought charts and graphs and beautiful things, and they just were like, ta-da! And she went around to all the meetings over that year, and then she came back and she said, Courtney, it's still not working. They're just showing data. What do we do? So now we're moving on and we're making a lot of progress, and we can talk about that in another response.
And rather than asking you both the same question, any additional insights from your experience around the importance of the role of the CHRO and the HR leadership team in helping to build that data literacy and data culture within HR?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just kind of add on, right? Obviously, it's important for them to set the stage by saying, this is an important capability that we want to see in our organization. And when you come to me, whether it's, you might start with data, add on insights, but bring that to us. But I think the slightly another track that I want to share, which is also coming from my personal experience, is when you bring leaders from analytics into other parts of the organization, and very strategically, very intentionally to say, this is the type of capability we want to see across. We're not just saying we want one COE, which has all these data-driven people. We want to bring this capability across. It's important in different types of roles and profiles. I think that speaks for itself. And then, of course, investing in the function and in the capabilities and the technology. So I think it's about putting, your money where your mouth is with that. And I think we've definitely done that in our company.
I'll say this. I totally agree with everyone. But I did, one of my previous jobs, I actually had a CHRO that wasn't committed about data. But in that same company, we were able to kind of get and elevate people analytics into that whole entire organization. And the way that we did that is, I always believe you control what you can control, and don't worry about things that you cannot control. So within people analytics, I think all of you here will probably agree to this. We essentially are evangelists, people data evangelists to our business, right? So in that scenario, in that company, even though CHRO didn't really necessarily know about data or how to leverage people data to drive different business initiatives, we made it upon ourselves. We force ourselves upon her based on the work that we were to do, the projects we were to deliver, the insights that we were able to generate. It made it really, really difficult for her to even ignore it. It almost got to a point where it's like, hey, I want to know more about this. I want to learn even more. So all that to say to you is, if you have, I think nowadays it's, CHROs by and large are very data driven, right? But if you are in a scenario where your CHRO is not data-driven, it's not the end of the road for you. You still have the ability to make impactful statements, do impactful things for your business.
And let's maybe expand on that, Kevin, because when you spoke yesterday, you talked about the HR business partner being the key customer for you for insights and analytics work. Obviously, not every HR business partner is like Gitanjali and has spent time building and leading a people analytics team. And some HR business partners maybe don't have those skills. How have you sort of in the past, how have you helped infuse some of those skills in so that they're able to utilize those insights effectively and drive change?
Absolutely. So I think for HR business partners, Gitanjali aside, right? So a lot of HR business partners, if they're not really data centric, what you have to realize is don't give them data. You got to give them insights, right? And one of the things I tell our teams too is, yes, I did speak about the analytics bias, or for those, unfortunately able to attend, is essentially as analytics professionals, we think whatever we make is the best thing ever. And everyone needs to understand it. Everyone needs to use it. That's just not true if we are honest with ourselves. And a lot of times when we think about the things that we deliver, if we look at a slide, we may have 80% of the slide is about data. And then embedded within the small finer print is what the insight is and what you should do. And the things I've always taught my team to do is it needs to be the reverse. 80% needs to be about the insight, and 20% or even 10 or less than that needs to be about the data. And when we have that mindset and addressing with HR business partners, it makes it much more simpler. They really want to know what insight do I need to know and give to my business leader in order to move the needle. And as fast as I can to do that in a most convincing way, that's what they desire. So kind of to answer your question, that's what we found successful when a CHRO is not really driving data is through the HR business partner. We show them, here's the insight. If you want to know more, okay, we got tons of graphs and charts to prove it, but most of the time they don't, and that's kind of how you drive it.
So it's like depending on the situation you're in, you can go top down.
Yes.
But you can also potentially go bottom up. Not that HR BPs are at the bottom, but you know what I mean. You can do a bottom up approach as well, or you can maybe do a mixture of the two.
Absolutely.
And Gitanjali, love to hear your perspective. Obviously, having been a people analytics leader, and obviously maybe faced the frustration of trying to infuse some of that data literacy into HR business partners so you can scale the work that you're doing. But now being an HR business partner, I'd be really interested to understand maybe the different roles you've played in helping build data literacy in the companies that you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, I was thinking back to, I think it was Cole in the morning who did a presentation about skills and, upskilling. And I thought there was something really cool where he said, we've been working on upskilling our HR function and, team, applaud yourself because it's working, right? So I do believe that, at least in my experience. Now, obviously, there's always going to be, different level of skill distributed across the organization. But I do think if you meet a lot of HR business partners and spend time with them, they're incredibly, they're savvy, right? I'm not saying that they're building machine learning models, but they're incredibly savvy with the data. They are able to glean insights. They're pretty insightful. I think a little bit of it is also the volume, right? And I feel like I have earned the right by being part of this people analytics community that I can share that, hey, team, sometimes we just are so enamored by what we create. We're like, take this, this is amazing. You have to see how great this is. And they're like, I don't have time, right? If you can bring me this, I love it. All this other stuff has to wait. So I think it's a little bit about doing that too. But I think getting to your main question, one of the things that I've had the benefit of doing, so when I was in analytics, we were doing a little bit of, okay, let's say we have a new data and insights platform, right? Upskilling our HR partners, engaging them, and how do we use this? How do we get more independent with data, right? So all about data democratization and how can you glean insights from this? What are the watch outs? It was all about that. And then last year, in my current role, I actually had the ability to partner with our members of our people analytics team now in a different role and say, hey, you know what, I've been in this role, I've been in this other role before. What I'm seeing is we've already gotten the basic data literacy out there. What we need now is how do we pivot that into compelling storytelling, into people being able to quickly formulate hypotheses and test this, into them knowing what is okay for me to tackle on my own and where I should involve the people analytics team, because guess what? This requires a deeper analysis. This is not just a simple, like, I can draw conclusions from this. So we also wanted to do like both ends of it, right? Like get deeper into the insights, but also teach them where to make sure that we're pulling the right partners in. So we did this whole program with all of our pharmaceutical HR business partners, and it was really well received, and it was a year-long process, right? We didn't say, here's one training program, go do it. We created a series that we went through year-long. We involved the team members. So we said, come and share about what is one thing that you've done with your business that you're incredibly proud of how you've leveraged data. And it could be like a strategic workforce planning related example, or something where, you know, you worked and looked at org design and spans and layers. And I think that was pretty effective.
Yeah, bringing people
Yeah.
together to talk about their
Yeah.
experiences, their fears,
Yeah.
and learning from each other, I guess, is really important. Courtney,
Can I piggyback on that?
you can piggyback
And then-
on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Go piggyback.
So what I wanted to share was I also was an HR business partner last year,
Yeah.
and I would have loved Kevin's strategy of feeding insights. I needed it because I had no time, and I have more empathy for the HR business partners because I really didn't focus on the data as much as I probably hope that the HR business partners are doing. But at the same time, I'm a very small but mighty team, and we can't do all of the work for, so what you were just saying, right? I want them to come on the journey at least halfway with me and do a lot of the work and actually create they know more than I do about their business. So I can give them an example of what an insight would look like based on what we're seeing in the data, but here's all the things that you would know about the external environment, or where these people came from, or what's the dynamics that you're hearing when you're in hopefully all these cool meetings that you're in that I'm not in. You know deep down, and that's actually an insight. So sometimes they don't even know that an insight's an insight. Like, actually, that's like ding, 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 you got it. Like, that's the insight. So I think it's more of a partnership, at least, especially if you have small teams. And I need them to be, I guess, more skilled than probably they even want to be. But I feel like they can, like they have it in them, because they know their business and they're just smart people, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have hired them. So I have faith.
And as you
Sorry, can I piggyback off the piggyback?
Yep, more piggybacking. This is good.
Since we're talking about upskilling here, so I'll say for me, I've kind of seen both ends of it. So I've kind of been on site where I had to create upskilling journeys for HR. Then I also felt like I call it the dirty car salesman, where essentially go to them, here's an insight, and I was like, hey, if you found this insight to be interesting, by the way, I'm having a lunch and learn session a week from now. Come learn more. So that's a dirty car salesman. Then there's another one where I found it's I have within IBM. So actually, I think there are people in IBM now today, so I can't talk bad about them. But one of the things that IBM did really well, we had a really robust people analytics training course. Training where you can actually get badges as kind of way to recognize, your achievements. It was really good. It didn't work in my mind to drive data literacy, because I think we all know learned knowledge is different from applied knowledge. So one of the things that I found to actually work really, really well is through applied knowledge. I call this Kevin help yourself model. So what I mean by that is a lot of times what I found successful in 2 companies I launched in is I will ask our teams to identify, hey, you have a lot of analysis projects, right? I know we can't get to it. Give me a list of them. So I had everyone write down all the lists of different things that people ask them about. Then I post it up into our HR SharePoint site, share with our HR business partners to say, hey, if you're interested in learning about people analytics or how to apply data, come tackle these actual real life business cases, right? And that got so much better because Kevin helping Kevin, because then they are doing this. I get the insight, I get the analysis to be done, and so I can deliver that to whoever needs it, but at the same time, they are also part of this journey. So I found that to work so much better than versus you trying to do it yourself. And I think the last one I'll mention as well, it's a lot, it's good to create your own analytics training resource program, but to drive adoption or uses of that, don't tackle it alone. you have to include that as part of a broader initiative. So today at Bungie, as a part of our, now with our HRLT, so we always say, hey, what do our HR teams need to know? It's not just data, it's also financial acumen, it's business strategy, it's, I don't know, AI, Gen AI, whatever the case may be. Let's focus on collectively at a programmatic level, what does that overall upskilling journey look like for an HR professional? And then plug people analytics as part of that journey. So when you roll that out, you're not doing it by yourself, right? You're not the dirty car salesman. You're doing it with a group of folks, and that's better to deliver the upskilling programs.
There's no car salespeople in the room at home. But Courtney, obviously you've been involved in an upskilling program at Colgate-Palmolive for a while now. I'm wondering, did your stint also being an HR business partner change your approach to that at all?
I'm going to talk about the upskilling journey, and then I'll figure out after I say that what my learning was. I'm going to learn while I'm speaking. So we did actually start, by e-learning, right? Just go online and look at all of these awesome e-learnings that we have for you. And we actually do work with Insight 222, and that obviously doesn't cut it, right? We also have Josh Burson Academy, and I'm sure all these things that we all have. Data Camp is another one. And actually, I partnered with the business, right? So I went right to our Chief Analytics and Insights Officer. What are we doing? What's the plan, right, for the upskilling the whole company? And then how are you deep diving in different functions? So I could really follow that more company-wide strategy and actually piggyback on some of their resources. So we have an enterprise-wide data camp license, right? So some of that is helpful for HR. But with Insight 222, we really have gone a lot deeper with the HRLT, and that's live sessions, live discussion, everybody taking their own problems, right, and kind of workshopping it through. And it wasn't just one session, it's been multiple, and then down to the next level of HR directors. We built actually one model way a long time ago in 2020, and that's where we were like, oh yeah, now we're data driven because we democratize the data, right? And that was one of the examples that I was thinking in my head when I said it didn't really work. We did that for 2 years and had some e-learnings, and that strategy didn't fly in the end. So we're really doing like hands-on, hand-holding, and I feel like as an HR business partner, they do need to understand how important it is in their job. And obviously you're not a good example because you absolutely know this, but a lot of them actually don't believe it, right? And so you have to actually be there to see that switch flip in their minds, like, oh my gosh, this is so valuable. I get it now. Like you can't talk, and also the formulating the business question, right? Which is actually one of the 8 steps in the process. It's step number 1. In the Insight 222 analytics process. How do you define that business challenge or articulate that business question that is aligned with your business leader's question? And actually in the plenary session with the Microsoft leader, he had said, right, that was actually a business question from a business leader about attrition of his team. So those are the kinds of things that I think our HRLT and senior HR business partners really need to get better at, is really consulting and talking about what is that business problem that analytics can solve.
And Gitanjali, you are an HR business partner. How does having that data literacy, forget the fact that you've worked in people analytics, you are data literate, you've got all that experience. How does it help you in conversations with the C-suite?
I think it's critical and influencing, right? Because no one's interested. I mean, as awesome as I might be, no one's interested in my opinion. They want to see how am I backing that up with data or with facts, right? Like, what is the basis of recommending something? And I think one of the things that I've learned is good to find partners when you're doing this, right? So for example, with the business, like what is the one partner, right? Like one functional partner that business leaders have who they always work with, always think of them as bringing data to the table, hard facts, and they're key partners. Any? Finance, exactly, right? So they're they have already that sort of established role and credibility as functional partners who bring data to the table. So what can we as HR do to kind of get more of that same, they start looking at you with the same lens. So one of the things we've also done is partner with finance heavily, right? So I'll just give you one example. There was, for some reason, we were talking about different things, and then we said in our business, hey, we do a lot of moves, talent moves, which is a great thing. We also do a lot of international talent moves, another great thing. But guess what? They're expensive. They're a big, commitment in terms of cost, in terms of talent, in terms of effort. So let's make sure that we're doing this the best way possible. And we can't base all this on opinion that, yeah, sure, let's move this person. That will be a good idea. So we said, all right, what do? We want to bring talent data together to say, let's look at 3 years of past performance of this individual. Let's look at what skills they're bringing to the table. Let's look at how they, have been moving from one role to another. And then we work with finance to say, based on that, right? Like, how does this cost look in terms of this move? How is that spread out over the number of years and where we think they're going to be having the most impact? And bringing that together, again, working with another partner and to say, here are the data elements, like instantly, it's like a switch. And our business partners are like, that makes a lot of sense. And then they start looking the HR elements also with a different lens, because you're partnering with them. I'm not saying you have to do that every single time or it's even reasonable to do it every time, but those are some of, I think, the tips and tricks that work well.
This is why we need to invest in creating data literacy. Right, we've got time. We've got around 8 minutes, so we've got some time for some questions from the audience as well. I do have other questions, but really want to get some audience participation. Any questions around, yes, at the back there, Jay. If we can get a microphone to Jay. Keep your hand up, Jay, and then it's coming. The amount of steps you're probably doing today, walking microphones around.
So mostly to Courtney, but also to the others, one of the struggles that I think we've had with HR business partners is we constantly push them to be strategic in their approach and thinking, but then we also expect them to make transactions flow smoothly. So how do you help them reconcile those two aspects of their job? Because quite frankly, the biggest part of what a leader wants is the transactions to flow smoothly. I want my promotions to process. I want my corrective actions to process. I want my terminations to process smoothly. But then they also expect the HRBP, and our leaders expect the HRBP to say, oh, here's a great insight about your termination, or here's a great insight about your promotions, right? So how do you balance those conflicting demands?
It's a constant struggle, and we talk about that all the time at Colgate-Palmolive. I don't know. I know this is being recorded, but it's really not going to happen. Honestly, I feel like the person who's in that senior HR business partner role can maybe oversee the transactions, but they almost can't do both, right? It's so hard. You can do it sometimes, right? But you need a team. You need help, and you also need good partners in compensation, in talent acquisition, right? In all of your kind of COE groups. And I feel like I was able to understand the talents of those people in my orbit when I was playing this role as the HR business partner and leverage them, because I actually don't know the job, right? I had never been an HR business partner, so I relied heavily on them for those transactional pieces, while I did try to do the more strategic pieces because that was what I was better at. But it's really hard to balance. And I feel like when I look at my HR business partner, I can't move my hands too much. When I look at my HR business partner population, I don't think everyone is going to rise to the same level, right? Some people are just going to be here. Some people are here. Some people will be your, number one champs. It'll be amazing, but that's reality, right? It's a tiered approach. But every HR business partner wants that, though. They all want to be strategic. They all tell us they want to be strategic. So how can we help them get there? Is hopefully better partnership and maybe better org design.
Yeah, right. I agree. Totally org design. When you suggested, I was like, hey, you may want to restructure the HR business partner job, right? But in the event that it can't, which is understandable for some companies, I think for people analytics leaders and teams, the way that you need to do is position yourself to say, hey, HR business partner, why don't I help you to provide that strategic angle? So if you're talking with your business leader, why don't you think of yours. One thing I've said this a lot to a lot of HR business partners, because again, when HR business partners, some of them, they might think, oh, you're trying to trespass on my territory, my relationship with my manager, right? And they're a little bit kind of closed off. But one thing I always found to be successful in those conversations, I tell them to say, hey, you are the CHRO of your business, okay? If you're the CHRO of your business, like the CHRO you have here, that person pulls other teams in, other centers of excellence centers and people in to help meet what the business needs. In that same conversation, I encourage you to say, hey, you're the CHRO, I'm the analytics person that provides strategy and data, loop me in so I can help you. So then together is one HR, not separate, but you are the center of it, like leverage me. So that's like what I encourage you
I
to
like
think
that
about.
analogy.
Can I add a quick, like very simplistic
please.
thing to this? Sorry, it's like we're all going to answer your question. So I think at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter if it's an HR business partner or whoever on the other end, right? Like as your customer, ultimately it's about, are you making their life easier? Are you giving them more to do, right? So at the end of the day, if you're doing things that makes their life easier, helps them have more impact, they're gonna find a way to do it. But if it's just adding to their plate of more things to do, which they don't have time for, it's not going to land.
So in some ways, Specs, it's put yourself as a people analytics professional, it's helping to maybe upskill your HR business partners, put yourselves in their shoes about what's going to be helpful for them and focus on that.
So it's upskilling yourself as well, in essence, with like, as people analytics teams, how is our business acumen? How much do we understand how the HR function works across the board? Not just HR business partners. How does TR work?
Yeah.
How does shared services work? Like understanding that.
And sometimes that takes job shadowing. I mean, you can learn about it, right, and in the abstract, but you may want to follow them around for a day, right? And I think they would probably welcome it. They meaning whoever else in HR you want to hang out with.
Very good. Got a question here from Chris at the front. This might be the last question, actually. So.
Only one of us will answer this one.
Yep.
We'll share. So this is really helpful, and kind of where I come back to is, in some of my experience, our HR business partners, there's a group of them or some small amount, they're not willing to take that risk to upscale for data, or they don't want to get more strategic. And I feel like I've asked other leaders, like, how do you handle those? So it feels to me there's just some group. So do you see a group of HRBPs who are just like, data's not my job, not doing it? How big is that group, and how do you handle some of that?
The resistant, the analytically resistant, I guess. But,
I think you have to understand it from their perspective. That's what I always like to do. If their resistance to something, I say, like, if I were in their shoes, why is that? And a lot of times it's probably that person's scared of data. They don't quite know it. It's coming from a place of fear. So instead, how I tackle that is try to work with them and partner with them to say, hey, I'll hold your hand every step of the way. But again, going back to what I said earlier, it's really about the insights. So data can be daunting, can look really complex, but insights is not, right? Because insights, you're saying, we need to take this action. That is not difficult to do. So if you do face resistance, that probably means you're too data-centric. You're probably doing too much focus on the data where they can't understand. And I think for people analytics and data professionals, our job, I think we've all heard about storytelling, but our job is really translate the complexities of data into short and actionable and digestible points.
And I think to some extent, you're always going to have, like in a survey, right? Like the strongly disagrees that you just have to accept you're never going to get. And that's just going to have to work itself out. But it's like the neutrals and the slightly disagree that you can pull over to the other end and convert.
I think it's, we've got dodgy microphones.
With our 30
here.
seconds left, you need success stories. So like you said, maybe those strongly disagrees you will never get. It's possible. So you need to actually maximize the potential of the people who are going to be with you, so you can share in that success and show that you're moving, right? You're making progress. Then go back and see what's going on with the people who are strongly disagrees, right? And see what you can do for them. But I feel like we need to focus on those who are ready to go initially.
Great. That's a great way to end it. Courtney, Gitanjali, Kevin, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, David.